very... Sorry, apologies.
It's all right. Good morning. Welcome to Breakfast with Louise Minchin and Dan Walker.
I have to be very excited. It's 7 o'clock. Our headlines for you. Masks for the public could put NHS supplies at risk. A warning from hospital bosses as government advisors meet to review policy.
Well loved and hugely respected. Tributes to accident and emergency consultant Manjeet Singh Riat, who's died after contracting COVID-19.
Good morning. The value of American oil dipped below zero for the first time ever yesterday, reflecting the state of the global economy. What does it mean this side of the pond? I'll have the details.
The government rejects claims it was too slow to cancel some large sporting events. Comes after some coronavirus deaths were blamed on Liverpool's Champions League game against Atletico Madrid last month.
Walking to the moon, the Scouts on a mission to the stars. We're going to speak to Bear Grylls and Tim Peake to find out what it's all about. Good morning to you. 21st of April, it's Tuesday. Our main story, the latest measures to tackle the coronavirus pandemic, including whether people should be told to wear masks when not at home, will be discussed by the Government Scientific Advisory Committee later today.
NHS Providers, that's the body that looks after hospital trusts in England, has warned this could lead to further shortages for staff amid concerns that health workers are still dying from the virus. Andy Moore has this report.
Manjeet Singh Riat was the UK's first Sikh A&E consultant. He died at the hospital in Derby where he worked. He was described as hugely respected as well as much loved. Today, expert government advisors will discuss whether the general public should wear face masks. Many countries in Europe have adopted the policy. The Mayor of London says they should be worn on public transport. But NHS Providers, the organisation that represents trusts in England, warns that masks might be in short supply for frontline health professionals if the general public are scrambling to find them. Yesterday's figure for hospital deaths with coronavirus in the UK stood at 449, bringing the total to 16,509. Hospital admissions with COVID are roughly stable across the country as a whole, but falling in the capital.
Here in London, this is now the 7th day in the row that those numbers have fallen. So that means that the balance between people who are going into hospital because they've fallen ill and people who are going home because they're well again now is in the opposite direction, so that there are fewer people each day in hospital with COVID.
But there will be more official figures out this morning showing the number of deaths in care homes. Last week's figures showed 210 deaths. Many people in the care sector say the true toll numbers in the thousands.
First of all, we're putting our gowns on.
Parts of the NHS continue to experience problems getting hold of personal protection equipment. Over the weekend, ministers said a flight was due to arrive from Turkey shortly with 400,000 much-needed gowns. An RAF aircraft has flown to Istanbul to pick up the shipment, but there's no word on when it will return. Andy Moore, BBC News.
So later today, Parliament is going to reconvene following its Easter recess, but with some changes to comply with social distancing measures.
Yeah, our political correspondent Ian Watson joins us now from Westminster. So, Ian, how does it work, virtual Parliament? How do you get to say what you want to say?
Well, only some people will get to say what they want to say, Dan. It will be Parliament resuming, but not quite as we know it. Certainly what MPs want to do is to set an example to show that they are actually socially distancing. So the number of MPs in the chamber will be limited to 50. Now, that may sound like a good idea because just before the Easter recess, remember, although there's no direct cause and effect link, but we did see Boris Johnson and we did see the Health Secretary being very close to each other on those green benches. Both of them then came down with the virus. So the numbers that will be there physically will be very limited. But what MPs are going to be asked to agree today, and I'm sure they will, is that others, 120 more of them, can take part via video conferencing. So effectively they'll be asking the questions on screens that will be erected around Parliament. They won't physically be there, but that will mean that initially the job they'll be doing is one of scrutiny. In other words, they'll be listening to ministerial statements, or if they're opposition MPs, perhaps putting down urgent questions to ministers. What they won't be able to do at this stage is actually discuss new laws. The Parliament hopes they can move to that if the lockdown is extended, but at this stage it will be simply trying to make sure that some MPs will be able to ask ministers relevant questions, but they will have to tell people in advance, tell the Commons authorities in advance that they want to take part. So it won't be quite like normal, but some people think that in terms of social distancing it will be useful, but also at least it allows a degree of scrutiny. And my goodness, there are plenty of questions to be asked on PPE, on face masks and all the rest of it. So we'll get some kind of parliamentary scrutiny as of today.
Yeah, and on that issue of PPE, thank you for that, Ian. We'll be speaking to Simon Clarke, who's the Minister of State for Regional Growth and Local Government. He'll be here in about 25 minutes on the programme.
President Donald Trump has said he will sign an executive order to temporarily suspend all immigration to the US because of the coronavirus.
Critics say the government is using the pandemic as an excuse to severely limit immigration. Our North America correspondent Peter Bowes has this report.
As America itches to get back to normal, a surprise announcement from the president in a late-night tweet. In light of the attack from the invisible enemy, as well as the need to protect the jobs of our great American citizens, I'll be signing an executive order to temporarily suspend immigration into the United States. The invisible enemy is the term Mr. Trump has used to describe coronavirus. More than 22 million Americans have applied for unemployment benefits in the last month, and there are fears the economic fallout from COVID-19 could last for years. There are already bans on travel to the US from Europe and China. It comes as the country is slowly beginning to lift the restrictions on movement imposed to protect people from COVID-19. Some beaches in Florida are already open to the public. In Georgia, later this week, gyms, hair salons and bowling alleys will be back in business. And from next week, restaurants. Elsewhere in the country, Americans are running out of patience. In Phoenix, Arizona's capital city, demonstrators gathered to protest the state's continuing order to stay at home. At the White House, President Trump said he was working with state governors to ramp up coronavirus testing, a key part of the plan to reopen the country. And he highlighted support he's received from the governor of New York.
I want to draw your attention to Governor Cuomo's remarks during his press conference today. He said the president is right. The state's testing is up to the states to do, which will implement the tests and logistically coordinate the tests. We have about 300 labs in New York, and they're great labs, actually. And it's my job to coordinate those 300 labs. I think the president's right when he says that the states should lead.
Mr. Trump says he'll discuss the pandemic with Andrew Cuomo at the White House. Peter Bowes, BBC News, Los Angeles.
Dentists in England are facing critical shortages in PPE, forcing some patients with urgent problems to apparently take matters into their own hands. This is the warning from the British Dental Association.
Practices were told to suspend routine appointments last month and set up emergency hubs instead to help slow the spread of the virus. And just to warn you, this report from Dan Johnson does contain a few graphic images.
Here's a dentist at work, but not working.
We've got all the equipment to treat people.
He hasn't seen a patient for ages.
All I'm allowed to do is give prescriptions out.
I saw a patient about 3 weeks ago.
The problem is protective equipment, and dentists are especially vulnerable.
Face-to-face without the appropriate PPE creates an aerosol spray which can spread the virus particles.
But I didn't realise quite how hard it would be to take out a molar tooth.
So some patients are resorting to DIY after failing to get treatment.
They basically said unless it's actually stopping me from breathing, that they couldn't do anything. There's no point coming in unless I literally, couldn't breathe properly. This wasn't the case, but the pain nevertheless was absolutely excruciating. So I thought I'd take it into my own hands, really. It was quite tricky. I thought maybe 10, 15 minutes, but an hour and a half it took, I think.
Some dentists have moved to work in different roles. Others just want to help their own patients.
Frustrated, I think is the only word. Frustrated that I can't do what I know I should be able to do.
England's chief dental officer says a network of more than 200 urgent care centres is up and running to treat emergency cases. She says the right protective equipment is in place and that there's more on the way. Dan Johnson, BBC News.
Germany has started to ease some of its restrictions on movement, but says the decision will be made later today over whether its famous Oktoberfest will go ahead this year. It's the world's largest beer festival. It had been due to start in mid-September, but is expected to be cancelled due to coronavirus. The event attracts around 6 million visitors to Munich every single year.
Internet users are being asked to remain vigilant as criminals look for ways to use the coronavirus pandemic as a way to scam people online. The UK's National Cybersecurity Centre says it's foiled more than 2,000 scams in the last month alone, including fake online shops, as well as password and credit card theft.
The use of electric scooters on our roads is going to be looked at by MPs. An inquiry has been launched to look at exactly how they are used and how safe they are and their potential impact on the environment as well. The UK is the last major European economy where e-scooters are banned everywhere apart from private land.
Captain Tom, who has raised more than £27 million for NHS charities by walking 100 lengths of his garden, continues to inspire people around the country. Now, another 99-year-old is pledging to walk the lengths of her driveway. Here is Winnie Page. She's walking 10 lengths every day until her 100th birthday. She's hoping to raise £5,000 for the North West Ambulance Service. Winnie, you're a star. Good luck.
Go on, Winnie. There are lots of people, aren't there, who've been inspired, I think, by Captain Tom. I've seen a young lad from, I think, Bristol called Frank yesterday who was trying to walk along as well, which is just brilliant.
So he continues to inspire people. We're speaking to him a little bit later as well.
Yes, 8:45. We've also got Tim Peake and Bear Grylls who are going to be here. I think about 7:40, 10 to 8 they're going to be here this morning. And I don't know if you've been humming along or seeing online, lots of people singing We're All in This Together. It's become a bit of an anthem for what everyone is going through at the moment. But here's a slightly novel take on it by Asher, the Cockatoo. Sounds a bit like Vic Reeves doing pub singing, doesn't it?
Oh, I mean, this cockatoo is incredible. The video's been viewed more than 3.5 million times. Devon Cage and Avery Bird Rescue say when they played Asher the song, he was overjoyed, apparently joined in straight away. The original cast of High School Musical reunited last week to remotely sing a new version of the song. Excellent.
Helgen nærmer seg, spør alle hva jeg gjør da. Jeg hitter kløden som om hverdag var en